Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Noontime Knowledge Series for Penn State fundraising volunteers, presidential counselors, and donors. Thank you for joining us. My name is Gary Abdullah. I'll be your host for this afternoon. In a moment, we'll welcome our guest, Evan Williams, to share his remarks. Once he's concluded, we'll have a Q&A session and discussion. You can enter questions in the chat box at any time, or use the raise hand feature or unmute yourself during the Q&A. Before that, I'd like to begin by introducing myself and sharing some background on our topic for the afternoon, a topic that's near and dear to my own heart, the Paul Robeson Cultural Center. My involvement with what became the Paul Robeson Cultural Center started in 1971-72 when I was about 19 years old. I was not the driving force behind it. It was a very grassroots initiative to make University Park hospitable to students coming from inner city Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and other places. Like the idea of Black Studies, which started at about the same time, it was not very well received at the time. But like other aspects of diversity and equity here at Penn State, it's become an accepted and much imitated part of modern life. Over the last 50 years, the Paul Robeson Cultural Center has truly been a driving force for equity and inclusion at Penn State. And I'm so glad to have an opportunity to be with you today to discuss its future. For the full picture on that, I'm happy to introduce our speaker. Evan Williams began his role as the director of the Paul Robeson Cultural Center in June of this year. Evan has been a passionate advocate for students across the Penn State network and joins University Park from Penn State Harrisburg, where he was the inaugural Assistant Director of Student Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Student Affairs. He also served as a residence life counselor at Penn State Greater Allegheny, where he created the first Academic Achievement Award ceremony dedicated to celebrating first-generation students and students of color who positively impacted their community. Evan earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in Communication Studies in 2011 and a Master of Arts in Counseling with a Student Affairs focus in 2014. Thank you so much for being here today, Evan. With that, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Gary. Thank you, and welcome everyone. It is a pleasure to be here and to talk about the Paul Robeson Cultural Center. And so with that, I just want to pay respect to those who have came before me and who have served and uplifted this space. And so, as Gary has mentioned, my name is Evan Williams, and so I'm the current director for the Paul Robeson Cultural Center, as known as the PRCC. And so just a little bit of a background, because I think it's imperative when we're talking about representation, who is here. And so a little bit about me, I'm from Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, which is a small town outside of Pittsburgh. And as Gary mentioned, you know, my background in my education, and just finished coursework for my doctoral program. And so for those of you who are out there, send me the energy so I can finish his dissertation. But a backing professionally, you know, I've served in multiple capacities: admissions, student conduct, residence life, and you know, diversity, equity, inclusion has been embedded in all of that, which I'm very proud and very excited for this next chapter as it relates to taking the PRCC to a new space. And so with that, I welcome you to the PRCC. And so the Paul Robeson Cultural Center provides programs of support, services to encourage and cultivate the appreciation and celebration of the diverse perspectives, experiences, and cultures of many underrepresented communities here at Penn State. And so a little bit about me as well. You know, been with the system for about 8 years. And so starting off at the Commonwealth campus, then coming to the University Park. And so with that, I've seen the breadth and depth of diversity that Penn State holds. And so with that, everybody is new here in the PRCC. We all started this past summer And so I have an amazing staff, and just want to take some time to shout them out. Marioness, who serves as the assistant director, Cecil, who's our office manager, AB, who serves as our signature program coordinator, DeMarcus, our blueprint program coordinator, which I'll be talking about more later on. And we have our first graduate assistant, Brunel, who will be working on some projects related to the Paul Robeson history. And so I think it's imperative to understand, as we're thinking about reimagining what the PRCC can do for the next 50 years. Oh, my bad. Go back. And so it has been exciting that the advocacy prior to us coming here to expand the Paul Robeson Cultural Center staff. And so shortly we will be launching 4 new community coordinators. As you can see, the Asian Pacific Desi Islander Community Coordinator, our Native and Indigenous Community Coordinator, our Black Community Coordinator, and our Latinx Community Coordinator. And these positions will be to help support those specific communities to make sure that they have the resources and services to continue to go to the graduation stage as it relates to student success. And so I just wanted to share that out for those of you who did not know that. So as we are a new staff, we have kind of did a deep dive into the PRCC and kind of understood what our goals are going to be moving forward. And so as you can see, one of the things I do want to list is number 3, our physical space on campus provides a safe and brave environment for students from diverse backgrounds to gather, share experiences, and engage in discussions about race, racism, and intersectionality. And so one of the key pieces is brave. And so we can't ultimately control the safety aspect, but what we can do is provide a brave environment for that brave learning to take place. And so if you have yet to visit the PRCC, I highly encourage you to do that. And so this is where we are at as a staff, understanding how we are going to be moving forward. And so the bulk of the time, I truly want to talk about Blueprint. And so Blueprint is a huge staple and resource for the PRCC. So the Blueprint has started, I want to say, back in 2011. And so this program fosters, student success, and we support first-year students as well as our change of students who are coming from Commonwealth campuses, with the focus of supporting students of color. As we know, Penn State is a predominantly white institution, and oftentimes there is support that students of color need to be able to find community and to be able to get to that graduation stage. And so understanding the breadth and depth of Blueprint, and although we do have, institutional funding, however, I think to definitely reimagine and redevelop what Blueprint is can come into support of, donations. And so this next piece, I really want to turn it over to Trinity, who is a current student, and Trinity Wilkinson Osborne is a 4th-year undergraduate student from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She is pursuing a Bachelor of Science degree in Human Development and Family Studies, Human Services, concentration, as well as certificates in Business and Diversity Studies. And so before she speaks, I really want to emphasize that, I'm very student-centered. And so, which is why I have Trinity here to talk about what she has experienced and what Blueprint has done for her. So I turn it over to Trinity.
Hi, everyone, and thank you to Evan for the introduction and for the opportunity to speak to you all today. As Evan mentioned, Blueprint, which was originally known as S-Plan, was founded in 2011 with the goal of helping first-year students and change of campus students acclimate to Penn State's University Park campus. Personally, I joined Blueprint in 2020 as a freshman and as a peer mentee. This was during the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And at the time, Blueprint was one of the only organizations on campus who had the privilege of meeting in person. So that was the only opportunity I had to meet and connect with others. The connections that I made during this time were meaningful, and many of those individuals have become some of my greatest peers and mentors. Being a member and leader in Blueprint has been one of the most rewarding and greatest learning experiences that I've ever had. The organization truly serves as a pillar in the multicultural community and provides a safe and welcoming environment. It provides the opportunity for to develop and also to develop others, and it also provides a safe and welcoming environment. Members are privy to a number of resources and opportunities that they may not have had unless they were members of the program. Blueprint has and continues to play an enormous role in the success of multicultural students at Penn State, myself included. I would truly love to see the program continue to thrive and make a difference in the lives of students for years to come. Thank you, everyone.
I was muted. Thank you so much, Trinity, for that. And when we're talking about student success is not linear. And so, which is why Blueprint needs to be, funded heavily to be able to continue to support students who are coming through, starting right now in our elementary schools. And so with that, I really want to spotlight Trinity for that. Another voice I want to be able to share out is Manny. Manny could not be here with us, but I do want to share what his experience has been with Blueprint. So Manny is from Philadelphia. He is a junior, the class of 2025, and he currently serves as a mentee coordinator and the vice president for Blueprint. So as it reads, Blueprint was my first real point of contact with Penn State community. I joined as a mentee my first year, and I was immediately met with a welcoming environment when I had no friends at all. I remember arriving at the welcome retreat and feeling the energy from all the mentors, waiting to find out who I was paired with. I found a true community where I was accepted. Since then, I have branched out into other clubs and groups, but Blueprint has always been the mainstay and the one I've always come back to the most. Through all the ups and downs I have experienced, I could always count on Blueprint and my family to keep me on my path. As a mentee, mentor, and now the mentee coordinator and vice president, I am proud to call my true home at Penn State. And so as we are talking about that, I also want to share a story that just happened yesterday. So as I was reading about Blueprint, there was an article that was dated for 2015. And the writer of that article was Portia. So I went on LinkedIn and I found her and I reached out and I connected with her. I said, hey, I know this is random. I just saw your article that you wrote in 2015. I'm the new director of the Paul Robeson Cultural Center. I would love to connect. And I just felt the energy, that the way that she responded, and she didn't think that an article that she wrote back in 2015 would foster this connection. And so as we're talking about even alumni, they still have this passion for Blueprint, and we're hoping to engage Portia to come back when we hit the 15th anniversary mark for Blueprint. And so I really wanted to showcase that piece because, as I said before, student success is not linear, and Blueprint should be a tapestry in and outside of University Park to reach our Commonwealth campuses. So that was Blueprint. And so again, I thank you to Trinity and Manny for offering up those voices. And I really want to provide some clarity as a roadmap as to where the PRCC is headed. As I stated before, we are a new staff. And so right now, our first priority is to understand the historical context of Paul Robeson. As I've asked many students, they don't know who he is. And so that is a problem, right? And so we have to be able to provide, literature about who this amazing man was. The second part is building a foundation of understanding and intentionality. Understanding that the PRCC has a rich historical context for supporting, our marginalized and minoritized students, but also what else can we do with that? And so, as I said before, we have Brunil Malcolm, who is a PhD student, and what they are doing is taking a historical dive and looking at all the literature and being able to create a document where we can utilize and house within the PRCC. So when these tours are happening, we have a focus point that we can dedicate for Paul Robeson and why this space exists. Number three, everything comes down to data. So what we are doing is we are sitting in, doing a lot of listening tours, and understanding what were the successes, what were the failures, and how we can create a story from that. Because as we know, sometimes we don't want to talk about the failures, but the failures are important. That allows us to learn better and do better. And as I get older, sometimes I lean on my parents' phrases. Back in the day, they would tell me sometimes you have to crawl before you can walk. And I never understood that until taking this role. And that's where we are at now. And so, which is why I'm talking about the expansion of the PRCC. And it may take a couple of years to get to that space, but we're being intentional in what we are doing as it relates to that student success. Lastly, is building a strategic plan, as I said before, for the next 50 years. And so we are setting up a model for the next crew of team members to continue on this wonderful cycle. And so we want to be able to expand the mindsets of social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and transform the PRCC as a tapestry throughout Penn State and our Commonwealth campuses. And so this provides a short framework in its entirety so you understand how we are moving and grooving here at the PRCC. So, as I stated before, Blueprint, some of the pieces that when we're talking about assistance, and I'm one of those people, I always like to ask for help, and continue funding for Blueprint. As we shared before, that is one of the significant factors of the PRCC and being able to support students from when they start until they get to the finish line at the graduation stage. The continued funding for expansion in our services and resources and being a tapestry throughout Penn State. And also, as we know, life happens. And I really want to focus on the emergency student funding because, as we know, some students lose parents, they lose support systems, and that is crucial. If a student is not doing well, as it based on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, mentally, to psychological safety, that's going to affect them in the academics. And so to be able to get that student to that finish line, sometimes that financial assistance is needed, as we know that Penn State does have great resources in place when those pieces that happen, but sometimes being housed specifically in certain units and departments can reach that extra mile. And so a huge thank you. I'm not too sure if they're on this call, but to Camille and Derek Gilmore, who are our current Blueprint Scholarship donors. And shortly, we at the PRCC will be identifying who those recipients are to be able to award them those scholarships. So thank you for aiding in that student success. And so I promise to keep this short, and I am open for questions if you all have anything.
I've noticed we have had a couple of questions directly related to the Trinity Osborne Wilkinson fan club. Okay, can you hear me? All right. First question was, how do students come to be connected to Blueprint? Do they need to find it, or do you go outbound to the student?
I can answer that question. So the Blueprint mentors, they actually table for the first 2 weeks of the semester. So they stand outside of the PRCC and they also speak at the involvement fair. And we also post on our social media as well, letting people know that the mentor application is open, also just letting people know what the program is and what it entails. So I would say we try to do most of our marketing between July and August, and then we do our in-person marketing through tabling for the first 2 weeks of the semester.
Excellent. Evan, anything to add to that?
I also want to add, I think we're also open for any past alumni who are in organizations to come back and speak to our Blueprint students, because they do hold educational sessions throughout the semester to build that professional development, those networking skills. And I think it's important to have representation as it relates to who is out in the world. We always talk about Penn State being a massive alumni network, but sometimes we need to bring that to the student facing so they can have that face-to-face connection. And I think, Stephen, you have a question?
Hi, Evan. Thank you. Let me follow up my prior question. You know, the reason I asked if we go outbound to the student is Penn State is a large organization, and sometimes it's hard to make that connection, and sometimes students are shy to make that connection. So it seems to me that going outward bound and making yourself known would gather more students and set more students up for success. And then my other question is, the Alumni Association has the Fast Start program, which last I knew had about 150, what I'll say are at-risk students. Is there any thought with making a connection between the PRCC and the Alumni Association Fast Start program? Because also sometimes when you have a myriad of programs, it gets really confusing for a student who is hitting a 40,000+ student college campus for the first time. Thank you.
Absolutely, Stephen. And I'm glad you brought that up. As someone who worked at 2 Commonwealth campuses, and I have seen students who have come to University Park, and the next thing I know, they're back on our campus, either at Penn State Greater Allegheny or Penn State Harrisburg. And so that is a great question that you're asking. And I think what I'm charging my current staff, DeMarcus Harmon, who is our Blueprint program coordinator, is to make his rounds around the Commonwealth campuses, because we have to be able to put that in the students' face, because our students are taking in a lot, right? And so being able to afford that opportunity to travel and support our students at the Commonwealth, so they know when you come up here, this is where you need to go. The PRCC for Blueprint is imperative. So thank you for that question.
We've got another question from Sophie Penny Leach. Are there similar spaces to the PRCC on other campuses? Is this part of a feeder system, or are you standalone?
Oh, so as it relates to the Paul Robeson Cultural Center, and somebody can correct me if I am wrong, because I don't want to speak out of turn, but we are the only center as it relates to the PRCC within Penn State. Now, there are other centers that may relate to different affinity, identity groups, and what have you. Like for here, example, at Penn State Harrisburg, we have the Oliver LaGrone Cultural Center, but it does not mirror what the PRCC is, right? It's literally allowing for students to go to study, and that's about it. But it does not have the breadth and depth of what the PRCC is.
Next question is from Veronica Hawkins. Really insightful. I'm going to piggyback on it for a little bit. How do we volunteer to be a speaker or to be connected with Blueprint?
Great question. I believe the contact would be Leslie Larson, to connect with her, and she would be able to provide me with your contact, or you can email me at edw13@psu.edu, and then we can connect you with those who are part of Blueprint. Blueprint also has an amazing, I think they're called PCs, Programming Committee, and so it's student focused, and they just launched their first Blueprint retreat this past Sunday, and being part of that and witnessing that for the first time was absolutely phenomenal, which has really ignited me to kind of push Blueprint in the forefront, because this could be a really great resource for, to be backed financially, as far as pushing it forward as it relates to Penn State.
I think that is really important. One of the things that stood out for me about your presentation was the description of the center itself as a kind of a sanctuary where people can just kind of gather, but also the perspective of it being a brave place, which was an insight I really hadn't thought about. but I can see now, and I'll mention that you would be surprised how powerful and how universal the desire was to create a Paul Robeson Cultural Center when we, going back to, to 1970s. It was like, it was on everybody's wish list. And it's, it's not intuitive, I think, to realize that, for a lot of people, University Park is they're strangers in a strange land. But it's a big part of what's happening. On to the questions.
Might I jump into?
Good to see your name. And his question is, can you define Blueprint Donor Scholar?
Can you define Blueprint Donor Scholar? What do you mean by that?
That's all
Whoever
I got.
asked that.
Riff on it.
Whoever, I'm not too sure of that question. So if you wrote that question, could you please unmute if you can?
Oh, yeah.
To elaborate.
Join in.
If not, we can then move on to the next question.
Next question I see is, can you share some areas or centers on campus that you partner with or plan to partner with as well as why the PRCC values collaboration and partnership?
Absolutely. So when we're talking about student success, the PRCC cannot do it all, right? And so it's imperative to be able to, ask for help from our Gender Equity Center, from our Center for Sexual Gender and Diversity, our Pascagoula Center. So all of our centers here at University Park, as well as, our Commonwealth campus, because I think oftentimes there is a missing narrative of support with the Commonwealth campuses. So we have to be able to reach out to understand, what is their need too, because we're all in this together, right? And so collaboration is key. And we just launched our Center for Social and Belonging and with Marcellus Braxton. And so I think that would be another key piece center when we're talking about partnership, because being able to go from outside in and really find where we need to show up is imperative. So thanks for that question.
And so you say you lost that center? The university doesn't have it anymore? You were saying that we lost a center, the Marcel.
No, it's a new center.
Oh, okay, so launched it.
Yes, launched.
Sorry. Okay, I think someone else had wanted to make a comment. Veronica, did you want to talk to us?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And as a 3-time Penn State grad and someone who spent numerous years in the 2 different Paul Robeson Cultural Centers and as a member of an NPHC organization, Evan, you may want to reach out to the undergraduate NPHC organizations to reach out to their alum, because I can tell you my sorority, we have hundreds and hundreds of women who would be honored to come back and speak on behalf of various perspectives of how we were able to matriculate through the system. So I would encourage you to reach out through the NPHC, and then they can reach out to the alum and say, hey, who would like to come up, and here are the topics or here are the opportunities.
Thank you so much for that.
Let me add, let me do a commercial for a group that I'm a part of right now, which is the Martin Luther King Plaza Committee downtown in State College. There's a substantial community of color that lives here. And one aspect of that is that when you're coming from Brooklyn, for example, or Pittsburgh or something like that, it can look like this is a weird place that you need a sanctuary to survive in. But I think an important part of the process is to introduce them to people who live here who look just like them. And for one thing, it will help them to say, okay, this is not so weird a place. I can expand my networks and my sphere of influences beyond, the next freshman that I see, and to start making those connections, to really make it Happy Valley. And I'm definitely interested in doing that. But that's the end of my commercial. We have another question from Daryl Daisy, another old geezer. What are the main challenges that you see, Evan, for the Paul Robeson Cultural Center in the coming years? Are there plans in place yet to address those challenges?
That is a loaded question. I think looking at it from a lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think that DEI is under attack, right? And so the PRCC falls within that. And so as a unit, as student affairs within, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, we are striving to make efforts to make sure we are still able to show up and still, provide the work that we do for our students because it is imperative. And so not too sure what DEI is going to look like, 50 years from now, but what we can do is control how we are supporting our students and showing up and representing them well. And so I think that's one of the main challenges. And I think with the attack of, DEI, I think that comes with funding too, right? And so if we don't have institutional, funding, and how are we going to provide these programs and resources for our students to get them to that graduation stage? And so I think that is more in part why one of the pieces why we are here, to make sure we have that backing. So when the next team of the PRCC comes through, they don't have that worry that, where's the money coming from? We already have that set endowment, to be able to make sure that these students are still getting to the graduation stage.
Excellent. Okay, just a reminder that now's your time to send in any questions or comments or thoughts that you might have. And of course, you can, hit the raise your hand button and we'll let you talk for yourself. But let me see if I have anything to read here. How would you characterize, Evan, the first few months of your role here? Has there been anything about working at University Park or with the Paul Robeson Cultural Center that's kind of surprised you?
Oh, that is a
Yeah.
great question. I often laugh because I didn't understand the huge portfolio that the PRCC has, right? And I think that is to be shared widely. And I think with that, it also is going to, take time. After I leave work at 5, I'm at home looking at, literature and stuff like that because I think that's important to understand, to be able to, fill in those gaps of knowledge that we as a new staff that we don't have. And so, for instance, next week we have Dr. Ron Frazier, who actually his dissertation is around Paul Robeson. So he'll be meeting with, my staff to kind of provide that overall historical perspective of who Paul Robeson was. And so I think those are those key pieces. The other piece as well, the students, I didn't understand how heavily they use the PRCC. And, when we're talking about programming and events, sometimes I cannot do programs within the PRCC because we're limited as it relates to space. The library is probably the most open spot in the PRCC, but it can only hold so many students. And so next Wednesday, we're having Vibe with the PRCC, which is a program in order to break the ice with the students as well as our campus community to kind of have those conversations, who we all are as staff, but we're having it down the hall in the hub because we're expecting a lot of people. And so those are some of the pieces. And I think one of those challenges as well moving forward.
Pardon me. Can you tell us any more about opportunities for alumni volunteers to get involved with PRCC's activities?
Yes, and so if you are not aware about the Rope Report, then we send that out every Monday. We provide programs and events, to kind of like have that storytelling piece right there. And so if you're not on that, please let me know so we can get you involved so you're currently updated as to what is going on. I think the other piece is I know not everybody's on social media, but we have an amazing marketing team within the PRCC that shares out those programs and events. And the other piece too, what we're looking to do is re-engage with our alumni who have had impact with the PRCC. I know that homecoming is coming around the corner, I believe October 14th weekend. And so really want to be able to hold space and for alumni to come back, see the new center, the updates, and to really start making those connections and having those contact information. So we get to that next 50 years, we can invite those individuals back to celebrate. At that point, it'll be 100th, anniversary at that time.
All right. Yeah, okay. Yes, Art, did you have a question?
No, I have a comment. I look around the faces that are on this Zoom call, and I see Harold Cheatham, I see Barry Robinson, I see my better half, Cynthia Baldwin. We all go back when the Robeson, and also Joyce. I see Joyce as well. I'm sure I'm missing people, but we go back when the Paul Robeson Center was formed, and not only that, I look at my wife. My wife was one of the key people to ensure. She's probably telling me to be quiet, but to ensure that when the Hub Robeson Center was built, that when the hub was built, that the Robeson Center was a integral part of the hub and built there. In fact, she played a very key role. And I'm sure there are other people that have this historical perspective, and many of them more so than I do. But I think this is one, and this fight that is going on, and I do mean fight and struggle, did not start yesterday. It's ongoing. It was when, and I hope my wife and Barry and Harold speak up. But when we were here, there was only 300 and I think you'll have to correct me, Cynthia. I think it was 200 and some people, 300 African Americans on campus. It wasn't 40,000 people, but the numbers now are much better than they were when we were there. And in fact, the struggle was to, even how do you get a haircut? Just on and on. And my point to you is this, is that I think that, what you're, and I know we're all active in a lot of different things here. Cynthia being the past chair of the board, past chair of the Alumni Association, Barry on the board of trustees. There are things that we don't have to reinvent, and that I think we need to share on an ongoing basis. And there's no doubt, that support. We are more than willing to support. The question is, how do we plug in on an ongoing basis? And that's my comment. But those are my comments. And I hope one of you elder people, know my wife is not as old as I am, but I know some of you guys are older than I am. I wish you'd speak up as well.
And to point that out, Art, thank you so much for that. And I didn't realize you were on the call as well as your wife. We met many moons ago at Penn State Greater Allegheny, and so it's good to see, familiar faces. And so I think what you were talking about, not reinventing the wheel, is important.
It's good to see your face and the fact that you're there.
Yes, thank you. And so with that, I think it comes down to the communication piece, right? I think we have to be able to bring it all together, and so we're not missing those gaps. And so I completely agree, but I don't want to take up the floor. If Cynthia is on here, she would like to speak as well.
I am on here. Excited to be here. Excited to see the people who are on here. And I do agree with the people who are talking about two things, not reinventing the wheel and partnerships, because that really does help. I know that that someone was talking about the Alumni Association, and that's a very good area where a partnership can take place. And I think that it really is imperative for those of us who continue to care about what's going on to come back. And when we come back, to make sure that we do visit the Paul Robeson Center. Those of us can remember how we fought for it when it was back in the Walnut Building, and what it looked like, and even fighting for them to redo the Walnut Building before we got the Paul Robeson Center at the Hub. So it's imperative that we do stay involved. And I'm just happy to see all the people that are on the call. And I hope that there's an easier way, because I do not get the newsletter. So if there is a way that we can even put it into chat, or is it by email? Is it an email?
Yes, so it's definitely by email. And I think that also relates to, we have to reimagine what that communication thread is. Because we know when we're talking about accessibility, not everybody, is on a laptop or on a phone. So we have to think about how we're sending out that message. But if you want to connect with me, Cynthia, I can send you the link for our most current road report, and also figure out the way as to get you invited to the listserv. Because I know that the listserv, people who are outside of Penn State can join as well. So we just have to work out the inner workings of how to do that.
Evan, not just me, but anybody who is on this Zoom call who doesn't get it, if there's a way to contact and to make sure that we can be more involved. And that's the first step, getting information.
Absolutely.
I know at the end of this, there is going to be some slides put up about contact points, mostly Evan's information, but hopefully we can also add some other information, some links and that sort of thing. And for those who are operating in the background, if there are any links that we can put up in the chat right now, that probably would help, because some of the conversation going on in the chat is like from Veronica. She was saying that it would be helpful to have a PRCC community alumni board or council that will help maintain connection, history, etc. And she got a couple of amens on that one. And we can continue, we can build on that process, or initiate that process, without having one of the things Veronica mentioned was there are, the deltas are here, and just by fostering, specific activities, that pull together the deltas and have them working in support, or just offering support for PRCC, we can kind of get those sorts of things started. And we're getting more questions. Excellent. Let's see. Barry says, close communication between the PRCC and the Alumni Association with its many chapters can be influential. Barry, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I do. I think Steve Wagman's comments were very important and helpful. It seems to me that the alumni chapters, in many cases, have activities related to recruitment of students, also finding internship opportunities and the like. And so I think working through that network, students who are interested in entering and applying to Penn State can get information about resources available through the Paul Robeson Cultural Center, which will be helpful to them as they make their entree onto Penn State campuses or make their transitions from the Commonwealth campus to the University Park campus. That's something that I think could be institutionalized in a way that will be helpful. Also, I'm not sure what relationship the Paul Robeson Cultural Center has to campus counselors and that network, and identifying students that have particular needs and making reference to the Paul Robeson Cultural Center as they see students trying to make some determinations about their pathways on toward matriculation. So those are structural things, systemic things that can be worked upon, not all instantaneously, obviously, but I think there are resources among the alumni and within the university itself where the contacts, the communication links can be utilized to great effect.
Thank you so much for that piece, Barry. And I do want to chime in. I know we're kind of like out of time. So those who are running the things, let me know when I need to, go on mute. But I think that is crucial. And I know there have been connections with alumni services. I just connected with someone who was part of one of those chapters. And so we're having those conversations about what does it look like, to have something here at the PRCC to make sure we're honoring and celebrating, alumni and what have you who took a part in the PRCC. The other piece is too, I think I have great colleagues who are in those different areas. It's just, about, creating the time and being able to have those strategic conversations and to reimagine as what that looks like. And so thank you for that. And I would love to have your email information so we can stay in contact. I will throw that in the chat for those who want to reach out moving forward. But I'm done talking. I don't want to tie up any more time.
This has been a wonderful conversation, but unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our time. If there are any other questions, if you can get them in right now, we can probably speak to them before we shut this down. But if you have any questions that weren't addressed here today, or if you have any questions that occur to you later, someone from the volunteer programs team will reach out to you and follow up. Thank you so much to our guest, Evan Williams, for being here and for leading this discussion and sharing so much insightful information with us. A big thank you to all of our attendees as well for your thoughtful questions and insights, and even a little bit of history. Greatly appreciated, believe me. We're going to share a slide now with Evan's contact information in case any of you have follow-up questions, and we'll also share information for Leslie Larson, Associate Director of Development for Student Affairs. If you have any questions about how you can support the Paul Robeson Cultural Center, please feel free to reach out to Leslie. She would be an immediate contact point, and obviously Evan. Also be on the lookout for an invitation to our November event featuring Penn State's Giving Tuesday team. This concludes our event for today. Thank you all for your time, for being with us here this afternoon. Have a wonderful rest of your day.